also the reason why I'm not the biggest fan of all this RA discussion that's always going on.
Yeah, but because they can be different RAs as well, like from production, I guess there are slight differences in RAs as well.
The factories normally get that right.
They get it right, but like still they get it right. The production tolerance are nearly zero on the RA, but still it's interesting to measure. It might be a reference for somebody, but the thing is, like, you can change balance, you can change swing weight, you can change weight, you can change the twist weight, you can change it with like adding or like even taking some paint over and whatsoever. But RA, like, yeah, you can change it by string tension and stuff. Okay, we can debate this, but like you technically can't by intention change it dramatically. And it's only one reference point out of so many reference points on what a racket does when you hit the ball. And I'm not even an engineer, and it's too complicated sometimes for me. So like, how would a recreational racket? And sometimes I think it gets, in certain ways, it gets too high in the list of making a decision which racket to play. In my opinion, it should be one of a list of things why I want to pick a certain racket or why I want to. But some people are already, and that's where we come to the craziness of recreational players. They read an RA of 60 or maybe 70 or 65, you name it, and say, this is too stiff for me. This is too soft to me. Well, it can be an orientation, but think about it. What's a string bed in it? Like, how open is a string? How dense is a string bed? What string am I actually like looking into playing with it? What do I want to accomplish by changing to a certain racket or by upgrading or however you name it? That's what I always try to ask people is like, what do you want to accomplish? Do you just want to switch brands? That's fine. Then we need to find the same. But if you make a switch in your game with any product, whether it's a grip, a racket, or a string, why? What do you want to accomplish? Like, what's your goal? And that's where a good shop owner, a good coach, gets in the weeds with the customer by not giving them too many knowledge or too much, because then they get confused, which I would get in any other area where I'm not experienced. If somebody throws too much information at me, I'm taking a step back and let me think about it, let me digest. But give them the right information and ask the right question, and then you can guide your customer perfectly through the journey of picking the right product.
Yeah, no, and I think also like this RA thing gets blown up a little bit on forums and so on, because they think, oh, that's stiffness, so it means everything. So if it's 68, it's I'm gonna have tennis elbow in 2 weeks. While the whole layup, the string setup, everything you mentioned, and it also affects people differently. So someone who might feel like a racket is stiff might feel completely different to another person. So that's the thing with personal preference in strings, in rackets, in stiffness, in how the layup feels. It's so personal, everything. So it's very hard to give like this measurement is too stiff. You know, you can't say that.
And it's super interesting. It's super interesting because if you have players, you give them the same racket, same string, two people, they hit a ball. One tells you, wow, that's nice. That's super soft. Like, it doesn't hurt my arm at all. The next guy or the next girl hits it. I was like, holy hell, what's that? That's too stiff. That's like shaking everything, blah, blah. So it's like, all right. And that's where you get back to perception.
Also, RA is spoken as one stiffness. So this racket is this RA. However, each racket has different stiffnesses in different places. So how do you measure that? Is anyone qualified enough? I mean, is it going back to where you need to have an engineering degree to actually understand what it is? And then you suddenly say, okay, well, this is more flexible in the hoop. It's more flexible linearly. There's more flexibility at the center of the head in the hitting area, just above the grip, to make it more comfortable. So you start going through different things. So the linear RA in just as a number doesn't give the full picture. So I tend not to worry too much about the RA, because I mean, if you look at something like the old Prestige, the original Prestige was not a stiff racket at all, but you got it was the most used racket on the tour. If you go back to the 90s, the Prestige, what was it, the original, the Prestige Classic, the 600. It's not a stiff frame, but there were so many players that were using it.
Customers that say that it was a stiff racket, but it was more so that they loved how it hit, but they were inconsistent in hitting the sweet spot. So that if you have a super small head size, and that you can put this with so many other rackets back then as well, where people say like, oh, claim they were stiff, but they weren't stiff technically, because they weren't. Some players weren't just capable of hitting consistent with the racket. So because they had off center, it started shaking, and then they felt that shakiness. They interpreted it as being stiff. And so you can't blame those people. But like as I said, and there we are coming back to the topic that we had right at the beginning of this chat: technical statistics, data, and perception. And sometimes they go together, and sometimes they are wide away from each other.
Yeah, and most of the time when I hand like a 95 screen racket, even to very good players, they will feel the string bed to be stiff because it's a smaller head size, even though the plushness of the RA is like, or the 60 RA. But this feels stiff, this string bed, because it's a 18, 20, 95 square inch. It's a stiffer string bed in that sense, but it's not a stiffer racket,
Yeah.
So they feel like a 16, 19 pure drive is more, better for the arm for them, or better, more flexible, because it's a 16, 1900 square inch.
So just that people get it right. I'm not like an enemy of the RA in general. I'm just saying, like, be careful with what you take out of the number, and be mindful of that. You don't put yourself in a position where you cross off certain products off your list. You don't want to try it because it shows that one particular number being too high or too low for what you might be looking for. So ask a couple of people if they have hit it, like listen to some reviews. I mean, that's where you with your Tennisnerd website and with your reviews probably set the bar as well high. That's why like some bigger .com accounts do all those reviews, so people can get a better orientation of what certain products deliver and certain recommendations. And it's so individual. It's crazy. I mean, a person who plays tennis in Florida will feel the same racket different than going to Stuttgart indoor courts, super cold outside. You will just, it's the nature of it, like how you feel it, how you perceive it. The ball, which ball did you play with? A lot of people don't even ask that question. Like when they just go out and they play it. So like, did they play the Head Tour XT? Did they play the Head Tour? Did they play the Dunlop Tournament Official? Did they play the Wilson US Open and stuff? It will have impact on how you perceive a certain product.
Yeah, no, that's true, and it's hard to test.
Not saying at all
everything.
that it's about good or bad. That doesn't say it. It's just how it feels.
Yeah, and strings are perceived very differently as well, like different strings and tensions and so on. Players will find it completely differently. It seems like tensions overall are going down, though. That's what I mean. I got some feedback on the Manarino video and about like, I tried this 12 kilos or 15 kilos maybe, or something lower, and players tend to seem to like it. Even rec players, and this is something you're seeing as well, Richard. That it's like, people are asking for lower tensions overall, or is that still, the same?
No, it's still the tension. It's rare that we see rackets where a player will come in and say, I want 28 kilos or 29 kilos. It's rare. Whereas before, you'd say the most normal was probably about the 27, 26, 27. Going back, say, 10 years. I mean, if you go back 20 years, then you're talking about much, much, much higher. I mean, I remember I strung a racket 45 kilos, and that was with 95 head in a monofilament. So, I mean, you can go back to, when you go back to there, then you're talking about 28, 29 kilos. It was pretty quite normal. Now there might be, okay, I mean, you've got Dustin Brown, who's up at 36. And, but apart from that, you've got even Serena and Venus. Venus used to be up around the 30 kilos, and she was down to 23.
Oh yeah, big
and
change.
Then she changed her strings as well. But I mean, you start going through different people. That it's all, I mean, someone coming in and asking for 17 kilos, it no longer raises an eyebrow. It's okay, I mean, it's it makes sense as well. It's letting the string work. So it's actually, you're actually letting the string do what it's supposed to do, as opposed to, if you remember with Sampras, when Sampras was stringing, he was stringing what, 122 gut at 36 kilos. So in an 85 square inch head. So, I mean, he wanted to block the string bed and everything came from him. Now it's actually letting obviously it's change of string as well, the technology. So everything is much more, the snapback. Well, hey, I mean, at 17 kilos, it's still possible to hit out and the ball still come in, because I mean, it's still because of the change in the technology.
Yeah,
so, it would be probably even interesting to see, like, if you would analyze a match out of the 80s or 90s in terms of what the trajectory of the ball is, like what is the average height of the ball passing the net, and what it is today, and certain styles of players, and I mean, there will be always the flat and flat hitters and the more like the spin guys and stuff, but like it definitely changed, and material played a huge role on the racket and on the string side.
I always think that the where people talk about modern tennis, why did it change? Oh, and you hear a lot of the commentators say, yeah, the rackets have changed. I don't think it is. It's the strings. The strings have been the biggest difference, because now the players can just hit as hard as they want,
and their physical constitution. If you
like the stronger they get, the harder they hit, the more the ball's going to come down. So it's the only thing that's actually stopping them now is going to be how strong can they actually get to be able to hit out at the and the ball will keep dipping, because it is a monofilament. So with that, it's the string, the change, or the monofilament now is has really changed. Absolutely. I mean, it's changed everything when you think about it. I mean, you see them when they hit, they are hitting so hard, and the ball's still dipping. So
so who of you gets Christmas presents right now? I heard a bell ring. Like, who's gonna get new products? Like, who's
I've got a player who's calling me as well, because he wants his rackets done, and I think he wants them done before going down. Okay. So it's hey, they can wait.
Yeah, you let me know when you need to skedaddle.
No, I'm good. I can sort that out after. I'd already done 4 before coming on here, because Alex is supposed to be hitting today if he can get in some with the rain. But
oh, you got rain in Marbella? What's going on, right, Richard?
Yeah. Well, we haven't really had any
since I was there, right? Like I arrived in Marbella and it was raining.
We haven't had any rain since then, and before that, we hadn't had any rain. Probably, I think we might have had one day in August, or maybe one day in September, and that was it. But then before that, then you go back to probably May, June. We hadn't had any. We haven't really. It's been really good. It's been a good year. But now we've got 5 days of rain, at least 5. So
drama in Marbella for Richard.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. I've had to use my windscreen wipers.
Yeah, no, it's a luxury problem right now. I mean, we had 2 bad months, as I said in the beginning, but now it's more steady sun. So
like the skiers love it. I mean, bad situation because of the whole COVID situation, but like my colleagues, they love skiing for sure here, and like the mountains are looking beautiful. So
we haven't really got. I mean, because we've got Granada next to us, which is it's 100 kilometers up the road, and the ski station Sierra Nevada, there's no snow up there.
I can imagine. Yeah,
one of the players, he's actually a top paddle player. He was in having his English lessons yesterday, and he said, "Oh yeah, I was up in the snow over the weekend." I said, "Well, how was it? Was it good skiing?" He said, "No." He said there was no snow up there. It just hasn't rained.
No, I know it's been a dry but nice Marbella time, right? So players know where to go for stringing needs when they get to Marbella, because there's so many players there now in this part of the season, right?
Yeah, I'm doing some down here, and then Nicky's in Marbella, so he does a lot down there. So I'm busy with quite a few different things anyway, so I don't do that much stringing where I actually actively go out and look for it. But I have certain players who come and they say, can you look after this? Can you do this? I just had a player come in yesterday who's going to be playing more doubles. So we're going to have a set of rackets for his singles and a set of rackets for his doubles, where there's a slight change in the weight and a slight change in the swing weight, so that when he's playing singles, he's got the racket which is perfect, but he plays at 324 swing weight. So and he
unstrung or strung?
Unstrung.
Yeah.
And he plays it at 327 grams unstrung. So it's quite heavy, but from the base, it's great. So he gets everything he wants. He can get as much work on the ball, backhand, everything works perfectly. But for doubles, it's a little bit, it's not as maneuverable as it could be. So he was thinking of making a racket or getting the rackets, all his rackets redone, so that it was a bit of in between them. I said, well, instead of having one which is, quite good for doubles and quite good for singles, why not just have two separate lots of rackets? One set which is perfect for singles, which are the ones he's got at the moment, and we've been working on those. So I think he's getting his new rackets beginning just after the 3rd of January. He'll get his new racket, so then he'll bring the batch down to me and I can do them for his singles. And I gave him a racket yesterday, which he normally works at. He normally plays 327 and 327 weight, 324 swing weight. And I gave him a racket yesterday at 320 weight and 315 swing weight. So with a slightly, instead of the racket he uses for singles, he's playing at 31.5. And I made this one 31, the doubles one 31.9. So although it has a static high balance that's slightly more head heavy, I wanted to get a little bit up there so that when he hits the ball, it's not feeling really wishy-washy compared to the swing weight of the other one. But when he's actually moving them around, as if on a volley, he could feel the difference straight away. So now this obviously is just the first test for him to see what it should be and if it's any good, and then we can take it from there, because we can always add some more grams. I can still add a couple of grams here, there, or wherever, but I've got the lead on the hitting area, so he's got a solid, it'll always feel solid when he hits the ball, but it's just slightly less swing weight, which makes it more maneuverable. So let's see what this test does. So he took them off yesterday. I think he was going to try and use them today, but well, I said to you earlier that he was booked into the course in Torremolinos that has a roof over it, so he might try it there. But yeah, so instead of having one general one, he's actually got one for doubles and one for singles.
I found it interesting with the doubles thing. I'm not a big doubles fan or player, but I see, I mean, there seems to be like a point to have a slightly different racket for doubles compared to singles, because it's such a different game, it's just like, but I don't know really what different trends there would be, but maybe lower swing weights, obviously, for doubles.
Lower balance point, so that they usually try, like the doubles players I had worked with in the past and what I've seen at training services and stuff is that they usually try to have a relatively high static weight. So they have like a mass that gets behind the ball that the racket doesn't shake too much. They have a relatively low balance, so they can be quick around, and the swing weight is kind of like refers to that. It's not super high, it's not super low. It's like a very, like if you want to find like a average. And some doubles players, they tend to play like extended rackets, which might be also slightly confusing, because people would say like, okay, if you have a longer racket, it's also difficult to maneuver. But like what a lot of doubles players do is, at least the ones, again, like I'm not saying everyone does it, is that they hold the racket slightly higher in their handle. Like if I play singles, like I have my racket like this, relatively low, but like they hold their racket here. So I had this as a junior. I was lucky enough to practice a lot with Pat Cash. And he showed me that as well. So like he served with the racket relatively low down, and then he moved up his hands for the volleys to be fully behind the grip. He wasn't too bad at the net, so was a good advice.
Michael Chang did the same thing because he was the first person with the extended racket. So on the serve, he would hold it at the bottom, so he would make the most of the
swing weight,
length. And then once he started hitting the ground shots, he'd
Give
move
it
his
up.
hand up. So he'd have the best of both worlds. It just,
That's
he just had to be, as long as you don't have you don't hold the grip where you're actually going round underneath it. And the way he was holding the racket, he could just move it up. So he was getting the best. He was getting the best on the serve, and I mean, he wasn't a particularly big guy anyway, but he moved his hand up. So
yeah, you're seeing that with shorter players, like they like the extended rackets. I mean, some like Diego, for example, 28, and Shang obviously 28, and then but then for at the net, it's usually a little bit trickier with the longer the extended length.
But there again, exactly
makes
what
sense.
Dennis said. You just move your hand up slightly, and you've got and that inch is gone.
Yeah, no, it makes I mean, I don't know what the extended rackets for the market. Maybe that's something you can talk about, Dennis. But it seems like the extended length rackets is not something you're pushing on as head. You're not really seeing a big niche for that in the market.
It's yes and no. Like there is a niche, as you say. It is a niche. It's like, and then you have to, at certain points, you have to make certain decisions in business life. For, let's say, the tournament frames that are, let's say, around this 300 grams area, there is not a high demand in this world. I know that now probably your comments will explode of like, oh, if you would bring, then we would buy kind of things. But yeah, it's difficult. It's always a debate we have. We keep testing for sure, because we always try and see. But there is always a danger, like an extended racket in the wrong hands can cause serious problems.
Yeah.
Because, and then you need to work with the knowledge of people. So like maybe coaches would put a extended racket too early in the hands of juniors where they are still growing and stuff. It can cause really damage to it, because the impact on your arm is like proportionally higher with even that small amount of extension. And I feel it, I'm hitting an okay ball, let's say like this, but I feel it as well if it has more impact partly if you play the extended one, if they are not balanced out properly and done well.
Yeah. And it takes some getting used to as well. Like, it's not something you just get into and start hitting and it's perfect. Like I test all kinds of rackets, longer ones and normal, and it usually takes quite a while to get into the contact point of the longer.
And there are reasons why sometimes it makes sense, like taking into account what kind of string setup do you play. So if you have a player, for example, that has in general that plays a natural gut monofilament hybrid, where the natural gut is in the mains, and he loves to string the racket in the mains maybe 2 kilos higher than the crosses, let's not debate if it makes sense or not, but it's kind of what he prefers. You will condense the hoop. Then it actually makes sense to have an extended racket, because once it's strung, it actually has the, let's say, regular 27-inch. So, but that's probably one out of,
Yeah.
So as a commercial offering, it's tough.
You get the players who actually want you to stretch their rackets when you're stringing them. Otherwise, if you just put it in normally, then it comes out short. So you actually have to stretch it as much as possible.
Stretch the racket. So what do you mean there?
They want to have it like they want when you put it into. There's one relatively popular guy from Australia. He comes into your string room and he looks at you and he wants to really kind of.
I mean, this is something
go for it, kind of.
It goes back to experience. When he comes in, you have to know that player. If we go to when you place a racket in the machine, you make sure that you don't stretch it, so that all the 6 and 12 are touching, and the other supports are holding the racket, so that the racket goes in and comes out the same shape. His racket's very, very flexible in the hoop, so if you do it like that, it will come out shorter.
Okay.
And he will throw it back at you and he will not be happy. So what he says is just stretch it. So what you do is you stretch it as much as it'll go. So you tighten up the 6 and the 12, you stretch it. And then when it comes out, it's roughly about where it should be. and that's the way he likes it. So
he's actually a head player, so like his support is very good that he gets from us. So he is.
So if the frame breaks, then he can get some more.
Why aren't we asking our listeners, your followers, send a list of questions, and we catch up whatever end of January, and we pick up those questions and we go through it. And if somebody has general questions about products, for sure, for me, much easier to answer general product questions on head product. But even like recommendations, because after our last podcast, I got a couple of Instagram, LinkedIn questions and stuff, and I'm super happy to help people. I need to apologize if I can't reply immediately with all the answers, but like I hope I satisfied everyone with answering and getting them some tips and tricks. Jonas, I let you know yesterday that we had sent out the Lynx touch sets to the list that you provided. Some might take longer, some might be faster receiving it. If somebody doesn't get it by the mid of January, please reach out like to me or leave a comment or something, and we will take care. So
big thanks for that. I think they will be very happy getting free string into test, and it's going to be interesting to see the feedback when we get those tests set out, and I will do my review as well when I get my tests.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to all of you, to everyone out there. Happy New Year. Stay safe, stay healthy, and
all right. Merry Christmas, guys. We'll talk soon. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
See you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.